day or so. They were really quite recent, but I do take the criticism that those should go and be linked on the website. There's no reason why that can't happen.
Stuart, what was approved by the council was that those minutes would now be published on the website following their approval at this meeting.
Oh, I see.
Okay, that's fine. Will the agendas for those meetings go up as it goes onto the calendar as well, though? Because
no. What was agreed by the council was that the minutes of those meetings would be published on the website after they'd been approved at P&R, and that was all.
Okay, no agenda, so we can't submit a question to be answered during those meetings.
Those are not decision-making bodies, so there is nothing on the agenda for those meetings which would result in a decision being made by the council.
No,
Thank you for
all
clarifying
those
that,
do is make recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lance.
Will it be possible in future for us to put that type of thing there linked, or?
Those items would normally be included in the published items on the website with the agenda, and I shall make sure that the staff who look after the website are aware of that in future.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Is that all, Paul, at this stage?
That's all at this stage. Yes. Thank you.
Excellent. Right. Now we move to the town clerk's report. And I'll take this in the usual way, just going through section by section. I'll say the numbers of those sections, and if people have got questions, can they pipe up or wave their hands or do something to gain attention. All right. So, Lance, are you going to get it up there?
It's showing on my screen. It might take a while to appear on yours.
Here we are. Okay, so 1, policy. 1.1, community governance review.
I think I just need to clarify at this point.
Yeah.
A point in advance of something that I'm sure will be discussed further at full council in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That the proposal which is currently on the table for Wiltshire Council to consider at their full council meeting, which is actually now on the 9th of September, not the 8th of September, I believe.
Yes, I just saw that today.
Yeah,
Nice.
is a proposal that was made by Wiltshire Council, not a proposal that was made by Trowbridge Town Council. Trowbridge Town Council has always opposed the inclusion within the town boundary of those areas adjacent to North Bradley Village, which lie between the village and Whitehorse Business Park, including a number of residential properties in that area. Whilst the Town Council did support the extension of the town boundary to include parts of North Bradley Parish, it was only those parts that were within and immediately adjacent to the Ashton Park development and the Elm Grove Drynham Lane development. I think that needs to be clarified, but there will be further discussion at full council in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that section? 1.2, the environmental working group. That's an agenda item, number 7. So we won't take questions on that now. 1.2, 1.3, the Town Centre CCTV. Okay, 1.4, Public Toilets Working Group. That's another agenda item, item 8. Then 2.1, the financial resources, the grants. That's an agenda item, item 10. Management account. That's agenda item 11. Then risk and audit, agenda item 12. 2.1.4, national pay review.
We have been advised in the last few days that this has now been agreed between the unions and the employers.
Yeah.
And the 2.75% is now being backdated to the 1st of April 2020. And
Okay.
paid by the Town Council in the September pay run. And in addition, annual leave for new starters has been increased from 21 to 22 days as a result of that agreement.
Right. Right, Jeff, Councillor Whiffen, I think, has got a question.
Yes. Do we know what the implications of the decrease in the furlough payments is going to be?
Sure, Juliet has got all of those figures to hand at some point, but whether she's got that answer tonight as we speak, I'm not sure. She might be able to send that after the meeting.
I do have everything, but not here to discuss. But obviously at hand here, there's a difference of 10% that we have to supplement. So now the furlough scheme, HMRC are paying the 70%. We have to pay an additional 10% to ensure the employees still get 80%. So it's just an additional 10%. We also have a lot more staff coming back on flexi furlough, particularly in Active Trowbridge. We've got all of Active Trowbridge coming back in some capacity, doing a certain number of hours. So I can give you all those details.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks, Juliet. But I understand it's going down 20% in October as well?
It will go down in September. It's 70% HMRC, 10% us. And in October, it's 60% HMRC, 20% us. And obviously, there's no national insurance or pension contribution either for September or October.
Okay, thank you, Juliet.
Okay.
David, Councillor Halleck, I think he's got a question as well.
This question is related to the National Pay Award. What did we actually budget for? What did we budget? What percentage increase did we budget for this year?
We budgeted for 2%, and as you can see, the award is 2.75%.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions on that? Okay. 2.1.5 financial implications of coronavirus. I think we kind of covered a bit of that. Any questions? Okay, 2.1.6 capital financing. 2.2 human resources. I'll take that as all one block. So any questions on any of the 2.2s? 3 town council services, 3.1. 3.11 the museum, 3.1.2 neighbourhoods, 3.2 venue services, 3.21. Oh, Peter, Councillor Fuller. Oh, let me get. You're muted, Councillor Fuller. Yeah.
Can I go? It's neighbourhoods really, but it's also staff changes. I see that Marcus has gone. How will we be covering his activities?
We are considering what the options at the moment, and the managers responsible for that are looking into the best arrangement for that, whether we have a replacement with 1 full-time member of staff or 2 part-time members of staff, or possibly looking at some apprenticeship options as well. But we are actively considering those. And I have accepted that is one replacement member of staff that we should pursue at the moment, despite the budgetary restrictions. I think councillors have given me a clear indication that that's a service area that they value significantly and needs to be staffed to the budgeted levels.
I don't quite agree with that. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, venue services. Yeah, we're on Longfield, and 2.2.2 Civic Centre. I must admit on that one, I'm quite excited about the idea of trying to get weddings in there. I think that's quite a potential upside with a lot of people with trying to get weddings done that were planned during COVID.
I also look forward to seeing all of you for your vaccinations at some point during the autumn. I might even have a needle in my hand.
All right, as long as you know where to put it.
Depends who you are.
3.3 leisure and information services. So 3.3.1 active Trowbridge. 3.3.2 information services. 3.3.3 facilities. Right, 4 museum project. 4.1. That's.
I think Peter's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Peter. Councillor Fuller.
Sorry, Councillor Fuller.
He's
You're muted.
He had it left up from last time, I think.
Oh, all right. He hasn't got a question. Thought he's just being shy. Right.
David Cavill has a question, I believe.
Councillor Cavill.
Yes, I'm sorry. The information services have been kept very busy with freedom of information requests. May I have some idea of how complex they are likely to be, or are they just simple requests for basic information you can find easily?
I wouldn't say that the information can always be found easily, because sometimes it's not very clear as to what is being asked for, and sometimes there is more than one piece of information that effectively answers the question, and often the person asking the question isn't quite clear in what it is, but one can usually tell from the question what it is they really want, but it's not necessarily what they've asked for. So sometimes it can be quite difficult. And it is particularly difficult in some circumstances to do that within the time limit, particularly when people are on holiday, because the information is not always necessarily in a place that's easy to find. So it does take up a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of resources, even to answer simple questions. We are able to answer them in the main in the timescales required.
Right. Just a supplementary there. Do you keep a record? I think you do, but do you keep a record of the costs of those those applications?
We try and keep a rough estimate of the cost of each one and the number of hours that have been spent on dealing with each one. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Kirk's got a question as well. Councillor Kirk.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question regarding that. I mean, I'm a bit concerned that we're not taking our responsibility to do FOI by the sounds of that question, because parish councils would be in a much harder situation, like a small village, and they would still have to answer the same questions. I mean, we are a much larger organisation with 50+ staff. We should be up to date with FOI, and I think we should be able to manage it. And it is something we need to do properly, and it is a legal requirement. Thank you.
As I've explained in the past, in my 15 years as town clerk, we received on average one freedom of information request each year in the first 13 years. In the last 2 years, we've received, I think it's now amounting to 60 odd freedom of information requests in 2 years. It is sometimes quite difficult to gear up to responding to that level, that change in level of freedom of information requests, without having had those resources sat doing nothing for the last 12 years.
Okay. Edward, you've got a comeback on that? Your hand's still up.
Yeah, Stuart, all it was really, I'm just a bit concerned that we need to take this and be able to manage it rather than be frightened of it and trying to, Lance just said that most of them we come back to on time, but we get fines and penalties for not coming back to someone on time.
No, we've never received we've never received a fine from the Information Commissioner's office for failing to do anything.
But we have been late in supplying information, have we? We have been instructed that we haven't met the time constraints.
Yes, that is correct, and there were reasons why.
Yeah, I fully take that point, but I'm just saying that we are much bigger than a parish council, and I think we could do better and should do better.
And as I've said previously, if the council wishes to invest in additional officer resources for us to be able to do it more efficiently than we are, even though we haven't received any fines, then that's fine. I can offer the council that opportunity to consider when we look at the budget for next year.
No, I don't think I'm getting anywhere with this. I'll save my next point for later on. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Chair.
Your point. Okay, right. So we got as far as the museum project 4.1. Any specific questions on the museum? I'm really looking forward to getting back in there and seeing it all up and operational in February timeframe. 4.2 sports pitch projects. Okay, so 4.2.1 Woodmarsh and 4.2.2 Doric Park. 4.2.3 Ashton Park. 4.2.4 Elm Grove. 4.2.5 Patchcroft Mead Cricket Ground. 4.3 Park Storage Project.
I understand that the handover is taking place on Friday.
Yep, on Friday. Myself and Councillor Fuller will be there.
I think Edward had his hand up, Stuart.
Yeah. Oh, yes, Edward. Councillor Kirk, do you have a comment?
Edward's fine. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just regarding this, I didn't look. Is it on the agenda, the Park Storage Unit, just regarding this wall and the additional cost?
I don't think it is on the agenda. So if you have a question,
something we should cover now or something we should look at? I understand there's been an additional cost, but I'm not sure councillors were informed of that. I have put a question into full council.
Yeah, I think
you want to answer now or at full council.
The retaining wall along the back needed repair that wasn't budgeted for between us and the post office.
It was really the actual procedure in terms of whether, when we go over budget, we're, as councillors, supposed to be notified that we're going over budget and the amount before we proceed, in case we want to, not do the project or alter the project. I'm just a bit concerned that to what extent, generally, if a project runs over budget, do we just carry on regardless and just, I don't know, borrow more money, invest more money, or do we at some point say, hang on a minute? I just wanted to know at what point councillors are informed, really. If the town clerk could answer that, I'd be grateful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Such matters are delegated to officers within the constraints of the contingency budget that's provided. The issue is that with this contract and any typical capital project contract that is used by a local authority, there will be penalties to pay for an extension of time to the contract. And if the council required the convening of a meeting to make decisions about that potential would probably add 2 weeks delay, which would cost more than the additional cost of the extra works, and would be simply delay costs and wouldn't benefit the council in any sense. So in this case and similar cases, those matters are delegated to officers, and we will advise committee chairs and leader of the council as appropriate that those costs are required to complete the project, and that was the case in this case.
I think Councillor Cavill, you've got a question.
Well, it isn't so much a question, just to confirm to Edward that when the invoice for those extra payments came through to those of us who have to sign them off, the questions were asked about what it was for, why it had been, and they were fully answered by the town clerk at the time. That doesn't mean to say that we like it. That's a different matter, but nevertheless, it was picked up.
Yes, I agreed.
Okay. Edward, you still got your hand up. Do you want to ask something else?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, just very quickly. When will actual normal councillors members be informed of this? And I just wanted to check then, I presume it didn't go over the contingency, so that's why we could do it. Because you wouldn't be allowed to do it without going over the contingency, surely. So I don't know any of the actual figures, so I'm completely in the dark on, the actual situation regarding the park storage unit.
I've only returned from holiday today, and I see that there isn't. I saw that there was an email from Carl detailing the costs, and I shall be able to analyse that and send that out hopefully tomorrow, but certainly before full council meeting.
But it hasn't gone over the.
I don't believe so.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right, that was the park storage unit. 5, the civic and democratic activities. 5.1. That's the basic calendar of meetings, and we have a town development for next week. Meetings. 5.2, dates for your diary. Weavers Market. Oh. We'll be back in 2021. 5.3, twinning. 6, development. Town development. Should we scroll up a bit?
Chair, Edward's hand is up. I don't know if it's meant to be up or if Edward wants to speak.
No, I put it down. Sorry. Thank you.
No problems. All right. So town development 6.1, commercial mixed-use sites. Bowyer's County Hall East.
I'm not sure there's an awful lot of update on that page.
No, I think on the Bowyer's site, it's worth saying that the Inox Mill market has run twice. That's gone very well. The cinema project that they had, the people who went there really enjoyed that. I don't think it made any money for anybody, but it helped raise the profile of the site, and it shows a willingness for the owners of the Inox Mill site to engage with the public and try and get them involved in the redevelopment there. Housing sites, any?
Just on the Whitehorse business part, the conversion of some of the offices there, I see there have been a series of applications for parts of that building for various aspects of the conversion process. So that looks as if it is moving forward. On the plan there, I think it's the 3 quadrangles. Which is the building that's been converted. The Madonna Court application was permitted some time ago for 15 houses. There was a more recent application for increasing that to 20. That's been refused. So that may go forward for the 15 that got permission for.
I hope so.
The Wiltshire Housing Site Allocation Plan, we got the Elm Grove site where I think there is likely to be a new application come forward at some point following some issues. The land off the A363, I've provided you with the coloured plan there to give you a bit more information about this site. So the 3 coloured areas, the blue, the red and the green, is the totality of the allocation site. We now have application for the blue area and also an application for the red area. The one in the red area will be considered at the Town Development Committee next week. We haven't seen any applications for the green area as yet. But in total, those 3 areas will amount probably to about 250 houses, with an estimate for the green area, which is greater than the 175 that were allocated for that site.
Okay.
An apology from me on the Hilperton Gap site. When I said the plan did not, the Hilperton neighbourhood plan did not fully consider other sites close to the village, I was incorrect. that was my misunderstanding of a conversation I had with Councillor Clark some time ago. So I apologise to Councillor Clark and the Ilperton Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group for that error. The Neighbourhood Plan did consider other sites close to the village on both sides of the village.
We're all human.
Yes.
Well, I'm quite sure.
We don't need proof.
Church Lane is subject to a planning application. Spring Meadows, the Newland Homes site, is not yet subject to an application, but that is imminent. And Southwark Court is subject to an application. And I'm sure Councillor Hill will congratulate me for reminding you all that there are some significant issues with that site that I've no doubt the applicant is seeking to address. And I think that's it on the sites. And local plan wise, the latest information was around the government's proposals for changing the planning system, which I would suggest are most likely to result in a delay to Wiltshire Council's revision of the local plan. But Wiltshire Council seem to be of the view that they're powering ahead with the review as it stands at the moment.
Watch this space. Right. 6.4 Future High Street Fund. So there's Councillor Kirk.
Sorry, Chair, I got in there a bit quick, actually. I should have waited for Lance to go through the report, but I just had a couple of questions really regarding it. But can I wait until after Lance has read it out, please? Sorry, I was a bit quick.
I'm not sure I have a great deal to report. I think it's all there in writing in the extract that I've been provided by Wiltshire Council.
Okay, I mean, I'm quite happy, and I probably will put in a formal question about this to full council, but it's just regarding the multi-storey and whether there's a 99-year covenant or there's no date on the covenant. I've also been informed that because of my election leaflet down in 1993, I think, or something, where it said the Conservative councillors at the time secured a 99-year covenant. Apparently, I've been told that it was part of a deal towards a section of land given over to the developer, and that's why we had the free parking for 99 years. Now, I've retracted and said there's no time on the covenant. It's not 99 years. Because I've read the covenant, and I did have a quick chat with Councillor Bryant about it, because we were, I don't know if he minds me saying, but we originally both thought it was 99 years, but we stand corrected after reading it. But I know there's 2 copies of the covenant, and I just think it would be really useful if we could determine what the actual facts are regarding the covenant, get the data from Chippenham in terms of what was agreed at that time, who had what and what was the deal, just so we can put that to bed. The other thing is regarding the valuation of the multi-storey, which I'll take that up directly with Wiltshire Council. But can we just have that sort of clarified? Is that going to be of any use to anyone, or is it just?
Well, I suppose in response to that, if Mr. Chairman, if you are happy for me to respond.
Yeah, please do.
My response will firstly, my response will be that the Future High Street Fund bid doesn't actually mention the multi-storey car park at all.
No.
I remain a little bit confused as to why everybody seems to be talking about the multi-storey car park when the Future High Streets Fund bid doesn't actually mention the multi-storey car park, but there we are. To answer Councillor Kirk's points, as I've said in previous responses on email to him that was copied to all the councillors with a copy of the covenant itself, there's no mention in that of 99 years. I don't know where the 99 years has come from. Yes, there were 2 versions of the covenant. I think one was dated 1972, but by the time it actually happened in 1974, there'd been changes. And so the one that is in place is the one that I circulated from 1974. Bob might know a bit more, because I think Bob had a copy of the original 72 one as well.
Yes, yes. When I was leader of the district council, there was a new covenant which amended the previous one, and the covenant was between the owner of Castle Place and the council, and the owner could remove the parking or charge for parking anytime they wanted to. The covenant was to protect the free car parking for the owner of Castle Place, not for the public.
So if I can just add a little bit to that explanation.
Yep.
My understanding of what, if you read the covenant, is that to build the shopping centre, Ernest Island Properties needed some land that was owned by Wiltshire Council at the time. And they were the legal agreement gave them some of that land, but they were then required as part of the development to build the new multi-storey car park. So Ernest Island Properties built the multi-storey car park. I think at probably no cost or cost of £1 or something to Trowbridge Urban District Council, or then what became West Wiltshire District Council. On their land, but at the cost of Ernest Island Properties. And because they'd paid for it to be built, they then benefited from the covenant to restrict the charges. So at no time do either of the versions of the covenant refer to free parking being for the benefit of the residents of the town. It is for the benefit of the owners of Castle Place Shopping Centre. And their staff, their workers, and the shoppers who shop in their shopping centre, and by virtue of it being free parking with no controls and no ticket requirements, it actually benefits other people who want to shop elsewhere or work elsewhere as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Piazza. So, sorry, Bob, did you want to come back in? Okay, Councillor Piazza.
I just wanted to make the point. I don't want it to turn into an argument at all. The reason why the multi-storey is associated so much with this bid is because the plans that have been submitted for this bid involve demolishing the multi-storey car park.
There's no plans being submitted. There are some artist's impression of what could happen. It's only been talked about as a redevelopment of Castle Place in the actual bid.
But that's what has been submitted as part of the bid, though.
No, you've got a presentation which was put together by Rory Bowen, which illustrated the type of thing that could be done. None of us have got a copy of what is actually in the bid.
But that was submitted.
My understanding is that in order for Wiltshire Council's cabinet to approve the bid going forward, they were presented with some artist impressions as to what could form part of the bid, but if the bid was successful, but they were not submitted as part of the bid to government.
Right, I know we've got Paul.
Chair, I think Chris Hall would like to ask a question.
Yeah.
He can't put his hand up.
He's putting a real hand up, and I don't recognise that. Chris, can you? Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, sorry, I don't actually have a hand on my team, so I'm not sure if it's because I'm classed as a guest.
You're a guest rather than a guest. I don't know why.
I'm just really, it's just a plea to councillors based on the information that Lance, etc., just said with regards to the covenant and with regards to the artist impression. It'd be really useful, I think, to ensure that the people of Trowbridge understand what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Whether councillors are actually explain this information to them, because I'm worried that there's negativity that's being engendered in the public based on absolutely nothing. So I'd really request that other councillors really go back to the public and explain the situation, the reality of the situation, rather than something that they've confected.
Stop telling lies.
Well, I didn't want to say it, but
Right. So I've got several other. I'm afraid Paul Jubby's coming back in, but he didn't mark this down as something he wanted to talk about. But I will let him have one quick one.
It was just one quick follow-up to
Yep.
what's been said about the covenant. I think people are overlooking the fact that there was a conveyance on the land in 1887. The land was bought by the public by Sir William Rogers Brown. He bought all of that land, the land that the town hall sits on, the land that the park sits on, the land that Castle Place sits on. The conveyance stated all of that land was always to be for the benefit of the people of Trowbridge. What then happened was a piece of that land was allowed to be built on by Castle Place, by the car park. That did not remove the original trust conveyance when the land was given to you by William Brown to be for the use of the public forever. If you look on the covenant, it mentions that conveyance in 1887 from William Brown. That, I believe, is the document which stipulates that cannot be sold for private venture. It has to be for public use forever. That land was paid for by public donations on trust to, I believe it was Trowbridge Urban District Council back then. The same reason the town hall is for the people, the same reason the leisure ground is for the people. Please, can you make sure you look at that conveyance, because I don't think anyone's looked at it. I believe that is the document which throws this whole talk about the car park being allowed to be sold up into the air. I think that's what Graham Payne was basing all of his campaign on, was the original conveyance from 1887. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Again, that's it's Wiltshire Council who are the legal owner.
Can I just respond to that? That conveyance relates to the upper part of the park, which is the part of the park between the tennis courts and St George's Works, and from Lady Brown's cottages on Pole Barn Road to the edge of Castle Place Shopping Centre. So it's that part of the park that is referred to in that conveyance. And there was a very small corner of that adjacent to Castle Place Shopping Centre, a triangular piece of land, which is about 20 foot wide by about 200 foot long, which ensured that Castle Place Shopping Centre, when it was built, had 90-degree corners, and otherwise would not have been a rectangular building. And there is all the necessary legal documentation which allowed for that small triangular strip to be built on by Ernest Island Properties as part of the development of Castle Place at the time in the 1970s, despite the restriction imposed by Sir Roger Brown. So there is no element of that 19th century transfer which is restrictive at all on the use or operation of the multi-storey car park, nor of Castle Place Shopping Centre itself.
Thank you for that. I've also got some other hands up. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't sure whether I was going to speak. I mean, Chris has partly covered what I wanted to say. Basically urging caution for particular councillors who feel that they can sort of preempt a decision, make premeditated decisions on what they perceive to be the position by a particular council, whether it's by this council or Wiltshire Council, and the eagerness that there seems to be to go to the press. I find it quite alarming that, for instance, in this particular case, there was clearly a leak of the PowerPoint presentation, which at the point wasn't made public, and then was leaked to the press, which you knew as leader and I knew also was just an artistic impression. As soon as you go out to press, though, of course, the message is out there, which unfortunately might be the reason that particular councillors choose to go to the press, because once the message is in the public domain, it's very, very easy to, very difficult to retract it. So I would urge councillors to remember that they are bound by the code of conduct for councillors and for this council, and it's not always in the best interest to go to the press and to make things public when things are not known. I would like to know what is happening on that site and what's happening with parking. And as Lance has already said, nothing has been mentioned about parking at all at the moment. Yet there already seems to be a petition raised by a particular councillor, and this is all over the social media. So it's basically just to urge a bit of caution, please. And also, we do have a member of the press here, I believe. I'm just scrolling down to see.
There are two.
Yes. Yeah, so again, just to urge caution as well. The last thing I would like to see is misinformation being fed to the public. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, the key things I'd like to see mentioned to the public and put across about this bid is what a huge opportunity for the town it is for improved pedestrianisation of areas, improved access, improving the river berths, potential leisure centre, health centres, all the enhancements to encourage businesses to set up and for areas to become residential. It's a huge opportunity, and I really hope that it comes through. Right, I've got a few more hands still up though. Councillor Bright, can you put your hand down? I've got Councillor Kirk.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points on that. I sort of got the idea the multi-story was coming down because of the leader being in the press saying that it was coming down as part of the future High Streets submission. So I'm really happy it's not coming down. If we can just have that as a statement in the minutes that the multi-story's retaining in place, then it saves the whole argument. But I just went off the article in the Wiltshire Times. I'm sorry if it's wrong and it's not.
At the moment, it's stated in the bid that there's a redevelopment of Castle Place, all right, and whether you decide that includes the multi-story or not, it's not clear. But given the artist's impression, there is an indication that that's a possibility that's being discussed. But until we have actual plans that are submitted, then it's all speculation. Okay.
I just think, therefore, that I know I've got a joint motion with Andrew on getting these 475 spaces if the multi-story's knocked down. Well, we don't really need to do that if it's not going to be. That's presuming something's going to happen as well. I just feel this is like trying to hide the fact it's going to happen until it has happened. That's my cynical view of it. I'm a bit concerned that the details showed it. You were on the front page of the Wiltshire Times saying about it. So, and now it's not happening, or we don't know it's going to happen. It just sounds like it's because it's a difficult question to answer and we're trying to avoid it. But that's my cynical view, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I would like essentially talking to Wiltshire Council on the parking issue, talking to Rory Bowen, who's been in charge of the bid. He has agreed that whatever is proposed, there needs to be a detailed transport and parking plan for the whole of the town that looks at the requirements the town needs moving forwards as we see the town, and making sure that those match up with what's being offered. If that is not the case, then we will oppose this type of development if they do decide to take down multi-story car parks. So parking is a key element in this, but until we have details of what's actually being proposed, we can either be neither for it or against it, really, because it is speculation. Sorry if that's complex.
Yes. I think also more to the point is the fact that it's a bid. We have no idea whether the government will accept it.
Yes, and all fingers crossed on that one. I've got Diane King.
Yes, only to say I do not understand why people don't want the multi-storey car park to come down. It is disgusting. I would never go in there. I would never get any of my friends or relatives staying with me to go in there. There is not enough room to park your cars. It's very difficult to drive up and down. It's like a urinal on the ground floor. and it is a blot on the landscape. I would be delighted to have all these things, these new ideas for Trowbridge to be looked at with all the considerations for parking in the area. Of course, that will be part of it. But why is this obsession about keeping a monstrosity like that, which does absolutely nothing for the area and could look so much better if we went along with something imaginative in terms of these plans, instead of just trying to stop anything new from happening?
Thank you very much, Councillor King. I think I've got Chris Hall's real hand up, so I'll let him re-enter.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to reiterate what Diana said. Completely agree with you. What I'm really concerned about is the amount of negativity that's been put out in the press and in the public arena based on pure speculation.
Exactly.
It's been portrayed as fact.
Yes.
And it's essentially detracted away from anything that could be positive. I mean, this is the biggest injection of cash that I've known of, certainly in since I've been living in Trowbridge, which is most of my life. So it's probably the biggest chance Trowbridge has had in a generation to potentially change the town centre. And the negativity that's being engendered purely, in my opinion, for a tactical advantage at the next election to try and get certain councillors elected from the town council onto the county council is cynical and completely misleading.
Exactly, I agree with you.
Okay, right. I think we're going a little off topic, but take your point, Chris. Let's move on back to.
Can I just point out that I found the map that I was referring to and
I
displayed it on the screen. So the area that's shown in red is the area that was acquired from Sir Roger Brown and is covered by the 1875 Act, which imposes legislative restrictions on what can take place within that area, specific to the 1875 Act. And as you see, that's the area from the tennis courts to St George's Works and from Lady Brown's cottages to St Stephen's Place. And the green triangle is the triangle I'm referring to, which was disposed of in a 1966 ministry consent. So the then minister, whichever ministry it was at the time, I'm not sure, Ministry of Works or something perhaps in those days, allowed Wiltshire, West Wilts District or Trowbridge Urban District Council to dispose of that green triangle to allow Castle Place Shopping Centre to be built. The multi-storey car park is included within the orange area, which was acquired in 1909. That means it was bought by the council. There are no public rights on that area. It's not public open space. And therefore the multi-storey car park is not covered at all by any of the restrictions relating to the park. The blue area, the lower park, was acquired in 1919, not under the 1875 Act, but under a deed which quotes for recreation and use of the public. The yellow stripes are what were the original 1887 rights of way along Park Road and through where the shopping centre now is and out to Polbourne Road entrance. And the purple area is what was allowed for the construction of the Civic Centre and then transferred to Trowbridge Town Council as the Civic Hall some years back in 2001. But as we now own the blue area as well, or most of the blue area as well, then that doesn't really apply anymore because we own the purple as well as the most of the blue. The bits of the blue area we don't own are the roads down the back of the Civic Centre and the road along St Stephen's Place between the two car parks.
Okay. Right, I'm going to try and wrap this up, but Bob's got his hand up. He's been patient. So, Bob?
I would only say that when I was leader of the district council, I got this investigated by our solicitor because Graham was making a lot of political fuss about it as usual. And this is the plan that they came up with, and this was as a result of all the investigations that they made in 2009, I believe it was.
Okay. Right, Mr. Jubby has got his hand up. I'm going to let him in one last time.
Thank you, Chair. Lance, can you just confirm the area you've circled in red covered by the restrictions from 1875? Am I right that those restrictions say that land must only be used as a pleasure ground? If that is true, why did you build a storage unit on what is legally defined under those restrictions as it must be a pleasure ground? Can you come back on that, please?
The 1875 Act is a long act with many paragraphs, and covers a number of aspects of the operation of a public park, which includes the provision of storage facilities, which are consequential on the operation of that area of land as a park.
Okay, right. Can we move on from this, because this was future High Street we were discussing here, and we've gone off on quite a tangent, but I think there's some useful information that's being shared. Right. So, any other questions on any of the other aspects of the future High Street Fund? All right. Neighbourhood plans. Oh. Councillor Kirk.
Sorry, Stuart, I wasn't going to ask this, but if you can answer it very quickly. Do we know on the plan, originally we were going for 12.5 million, then it jumped to like 24 million. What caused that jump? What went in it that or wasn't in it before?
Yeah, then I think that was essentially further, and this is just speculation, okay, because I don't have this written down, but it is the further development of the Castle Place and bringing in all the leisure and health and so on. So, you know, I think there is an element of Wiltshire Council trying to kill two birds with one stone by doing that. But I don't object to them asking for more money, as it increases our chances of gaining the original amount we were asking for.
Thank you.
Okay, anything on the neighbourhood plans? I'll take that on block, any of them. Okay, Trowbridge Partnerships, Trowbridge Future, and then 7.2, the David Baker Foundation, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, 7.7, 7.8, 7.9, 7.10, 7.11. 8 Wiltshire, 8.1, 8.11, 8.12, 8.13, 8.14, 8.15. 8.16 pavement licenses, 8.17, 8.18, 8.2, 8.21. 8.3, 8.4, on the police, 8.41, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, 8.8. Oh, Councillor Kirk.
Sorry, Chair, just very quickly, the rough sleeping situation, we had a task group and the rest of it. Sorry, my eyesight's really rubbish. I can't read it on the screen. But what happened with our meetings? Are they just postponed until coronavirus has gone away, so in a few years, or was there an update from officers? I was on a task group. I think Lance was Lance, you were on it with me, were you? Can't remember now.
I can't remember either.
No,
Okay,
I think that's
all right, forget that. I'll find out.
Yeah, we'll ask through the area board once we get the area board started this
Okay.
month. I think that's a good way to channel that.
Okay, thank you.
You know the activities of the housing, the homeless during COVID. It's trying to understand what's happened coming out of
I mean,
that.
we still have them in the. I mean, I noticed. I know Andrew's hot on this as well, but there's the Thomas Cook area. You know, a lady sets up camp there, goes home at night, and then sets up during the day. There's a lot of sort of things like that which I'd really like to sort of tackle at some point if we can. So I'd be quite keen for that group to get going again and look after the ones who need help, and then you know, look at alternatives for the others. Thank you.
All right. sorry, where was it? 8.5, Wiltshire Association of Local Councils, 8.6, 8.7, 8.8, 8.9, 8.10. Oh.
Could, Chair, could, oh, Edward's taken his hand down now. I just couldn't see some of it because of his hand being up, but he's taken it down.
Oh, good. Don't want his hand getting in the way. They're the financial figures, so it's just Forum Towns Clerk. Right, so report from the Environmental Working Group next.
Yeah, we've got another meeting. Our next meeting's on Thursday. There's a few things in the pipeline. One thing we're going to be talking about Thursday is David Cavill's come up with a really good recommendation with regards to Brambletown, which is going to be really interesting. And so we're going to discuss that and see how as a group we can help David push that along. Graham is looking into, well, he's quite a long way down the line now with regards to water filling stations that could potentially be put around the town.
Yeah.
So he's hopefully going to report back on that. We're going to discuss with a co-op community initiative with regards to hopefully getting some possible grants or maybe some help with regards to tree planting that we're looking to be doing in the autumn. And it's it's all being really well supported. Lots of different people from the community, and I say it every time, but it's just an absolute pleasure working with everyone. Everyone's coming up with some great ideas, so looking forward to Thursday.
Okay, thank you. I think we got a question from Councillor Kirk.
Very quick. I'd just like Chris's advice, really, or his group's advice on. There seems to be pressure from some residents to cut grass. I've had this during the summer, and then others because of that blue. I've forgotten what it's called now. Blue something group to leave it.
Yeah.
And that is causing me, I'm trying to designate some areas to be set aside for that.
Yeah.
And put signage on it. So we're leaving them wild, but residents don't complain because the grass hasn't been cut. I just want to know, is that something your group can look at as a Trowbridge whole thing and say, Edward, you need to approach it from this angle or this? Because at the moment, you get criticised for not cutting the grass, then you get criticised for cutting the grass, and it's a no-win situation, and you upset half. So
it is something we are looking at. I think the key is firstly that you have to cut grass where it's recreational, safety, etc., etc. But there are areas where you can leave it. And I think what you were saying about putting signs up, I think that's a really important thing to do with regards to communicating with the community as to why things are happening. That it's not just because they're being left because we're too lazy to cut it, but there's actually a reason to it. So you could try and educate and bring people along with it. But you're absolutely right, Edward. We will come back with some kind of proper advice as to what the best way to approach it. And I think that is probably going to be part of the environmental strategy document as well. The ecological section of that, it could be worked into that. So yeah, good point.
I think that will also be an awful lot easier once the asset transfer with Wiltshire Council's been completed. So an awful lot more of that land is under our control. Then I'm assuming there'll be a big sit down and we'll look at all the green areas and decide what the cutting regimes will be in different areas. But at the moment, it's quite difficult with the mix of ownerships.
And you got to try and bring people along with you. Got to educate people and tell them.
It does make a good point that residents are not a coherent mass of a single opinion. That there's a lot of cases where it can be 50-50, and then the councillors, you've got to make the decision based on what you feel is best for them. But it's to say the residents is always a bit of a mistake because they're not all the same opinion. Sorry,
move we note.
Yeah.
I think David had his hand up.
Just very quickly, one of the things that we did in our recommendation is that we inserted the word managed, and I think, Edward, by emphasising the fact that all these areas will eventually be managed, in a way that will provide the best environment is really, really important. We're not just, I don't think anybody's suggesting we just leave them to grow willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite right, David. Yeah.
Sorry,
Chair, I second Bob's movement.
Okay.
Yeah, so noted, and I think Lance has got his hand up.
I have actually, yes. I was aware that I'd received something from Steve Oldreeve, which was a proposal to change the environmental policy, which I think had been discussed by the group. I don't think it quite got to me in time to put on the agenda for tonight. I wasn't sure whether Chris was keen to get that sort of done as quickly as possible, or if he was happy to leave it until the next P&R meeting.
Yeah, when is the next P&R? How long
Next
is that?
one will be in November.
I mean, I would like. I think it's good to get the document in place. I don't know how can we do that tonight? Is it something? I mean, I don't know what the procedure is.
It's not really, because it's not on the agenda, but I could perhaps add it to the full council agenda.
That would be great, Lars. If you don't mind, yeah, that'd be really good.
Yeah, I think
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Lance. That's number. Yeah. Okay. Real-time editing. Excellent.
Okay.
You can put your hand down now, Lance.
How do I do that?
You've done it. Right. 7. So 8. Public Toilets Working Group to receive their recommendations. I think everyone's read this, but we've got 2 members of the group on board now. Does Councillor Bryant, do you want to give a quick summary?
Move the recommendations.
Okay, I'll second that, but I'll let Councillor Bryant talk.
Sorry, I unmuted and then managed to mute myself again. Yeah, I don't want to give too much of a preamble to this because it's been laboured in social media so much. I do want to clear up a couple of things just very quickly, though. I was looking at a bit of social media that unfortunately was posted back in 29th of April by somebody on the council. Really pleased to confirm that we're bringing back Trowbridge's Park toilets. Just if there are any members of the public, there was no decision. The decision is this evening to progress if we do or if we don't. The decision to set up a working party was to look at look at options, not to necessarily bring them back. Another point that I want to make is with the press here is it was a council decision to demolish the previous toilets, and we're not going to labour that point, but unfortunately it's been turned on social media into a partisan decision, which was not the case. And the third thing, just very quickly, certainly 2 people who were actually in attendance this evening have posted on social media about how the toilets were award-winning under Wiltshire Council. Now, I'm happy to be proved wrong, very happy to be proved wrong, but I believe that's totally erroneous. They were award-winning under West Wiltshire District Council, which was a totally different council prior to Wiltshire Council taking them over. Wiltshire Council was actually the body that in 2016 decided to get rid of all of their toilets in Wiltshire, apart from one, and I believe they still own that, and that's Castle Combe, which of course has however many thousand visitors every year for being the prettiest village in the country. So I reiterate with the press here, West Wiltshire Council won awards. West Wiltshire Council was taken away from us in 2009, I believe. I was on the council at the time, by Wiltshire Council, who at the time were Wiltshire County Council. So having cleared that up, I just move on to the recommendations. So many thanks first of all to the working party, which was chaired by myself and also had Diana King and Dennis. I don't believe Dennis is here this evening, Diana is though. So many thanks to them, and of course Lance as well, who attended all of the meetings. We undertook consultation through SurveyMonkey. We had a very good rate of reply. I think it was up in the 470 something in the end, and might have even been higher by the end. We have come up with the following recommendations, A, B and C. Could you scroll up slightly, please, Lance? The hands are covering some of the recommendations. That's super, thank you. So recommendation A, in the short term during 2021, a public toilet facility is developed within the Civic Centre building adjacent to the avenue entrance. For anybody not knowing where the avenue entrance is, that's the avenue of trees which goes down through the main centre of the park. So if you think of the main doors that you come into the lobby, as opposed to the TIC entrance, that's the avenue entrance. So it would be one facility to the right-hand side of those sliding doors. That would be accessible outside of normal hours, but there's no commitment within this recommendation to keep it open 24 hours. The details would be for the debate of the council. So there would be a new external door and conversion, sorry, I'm trying to read this off here, conversion of the existing disabled toilet on the ground floor with the option, subject to funding, of including a changing places facility. The existing cleaners cupboard would be converted to be used as the internal disabled toilet.
Andrew, could I just come in now? Because one of the things that in the survey said where people would like toilets, one of them was to be near the children's play area, which of course this would be. So that would be fairly adjacent to it. And that's why, again, we thought that that would be a reasonable place to have it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Diana. Yeah. Which I personally find a very exciting option. B is that in the medium term, we actually look at building a pavilion. Now, this pavilion would be overlooking both the Mugger, which is the, if people are on here that don't know, the Mugger is the multi-use games area, which is joined onto the tennis court, but also overlooking the bowls club. So that would include toilet facilities, lockers, changing facilities for the tennis and the bowls, and possibly the outlet as well for refreshments. Now, I've spoken briefly with Rory, who's overlooking the bid for the either 12 or 23 million. To try and get there in as early as possible, just to sort of plant that seed that we could possibly tap into some of that money. So there's no commitment from either council in that respect, but it's something that we can obviously pursue if we agree to go ahead with this evening.
Andrew, can I just add something else to that along the same lines? That something else that was mentioned quite frequently in the survey was people who thought that there should be facilities for tennis players, as indeed there should. And this would cover that, indeed, that they would have changing facilities and there would be toilets for the bowls people and the tennis people and public toilets as well.
Yeah,
So
I think that,
everything.
Yeah, that's very important, Diana, because I should have mentioned again, people may not be aware there are currently no changing facilities for the tennis court users and the users of the Mugger. We also don't want to predetermine if things go ahead with the county council funding bid, Future High Streets Fund, that we would be able to access those changing facilities for our facilities within the park. We also don't want people necessarily having to travel from the county facilities across the park to access the tennis courts or the bowls club. C is a community toilet scheme involving commercial establishments. So this is basically not trying to force any agencies or businesses to collaborate within the scheme, but if there is willingness there, to make sure that that's highly publicised. So we could be looking at possibly a sticker system whereby there's an official sticker that can go into a window of an establishment. Again, I don't want to dwell on the previous history of the toilets, but of course we used to have facilities down at the bottom. When I say we, Trowbridge used to have facilities at the bottom of Wicker Hill. Not that they were particularly nice, but the county council got rid of those. So facilities further down in the town would be advantageous. So we need to publicise them where possible. And tying into all of this, a comprehensive signage system under point D for the town centre, potentially as part of the Future High Streets Fund, so the public can more easily identify the locations of a range of facilities, including the public toilets throughout the town. So those are the recommendations which I believe have been seconded. Yeah. Thank you for that. And again, thank you to the Working Party and to Lance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just add that we had decided that we couldn't look in too great a depth at the cost of either, because we didn't want to incur a cost before we knew what the P&R and ultimately the full council were going to agree.
Okay. Right, I've got a number of hands up, which I'll just take in order to, as they are on the screen. And first up is Mr. Jubby, who's had asked to speak on this, and I'd ask him if possible to stay as brief as possible, because we are cracking on in time here. But thank you.
I'll try to stay brief as I can, Chair. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd just like to point out, if I may, option A. Councillors may have a short memory, but I do not. Option A was recommended by Councillor Kirk in January 2019. It was rejected by council, saying you could not afford that because you would not be able to provide a toilet out of hours. It's minuted on council minutes that Councillor Kirk recommended that in January 2019, and you threw out that recommendation. Hopefully, Mr. Allen will be able to confirm that when he goes back into the notes. Option B, I'd reiterate again what Mr. Bryan said.
So can I pause you for a minute?
Certainly.
So all right, so things may have been put on in the past and rejected. People have changed their minds. That's fair enough. But are you in favour of option A then? I'm
in favour of option A. Yeah, I'm just wanting to make the point that we could have resolved this a year ago if you'd have listened to a councillor back then. You basically now just recommended something which you refused to do a year ago. Just want to put that on the record, okay? Option B, obviously, I agree with that. If you can get funding for it, it's amazing. I just wonder, mentioning about covenants and that again, could the chief executive confirm, are you allowed to build a public toilet on ground designated for recreational? Is that allowed? I also want to point out that the law recently changed about changing places, and under current law, any new building must by law include a changing place. So you wouldn't have a choice. If you built a new pavilion, you would by law have to provide a changing place in it. Please can you make sure you take that into account. Option C, a community toileting scheme. Again, I've got a long memory. You did offer financial incentives to businesses last June. Not a single business took up that offer. The only offer you were given was by Castle Place, who told you they would need £17,000 from you to open. So you rejected the community toileting scheme back then as well. It was completely unsuccessful. So whilst I appreciate all of these recommendations, they've already happened in the past. They were already voted against or they were unsuccessful. So I'm sorry to say I can't see anything new here whatsoever. Can we please have all of the data from this consultation released to the public so we can see how you came to this decision? I agree we need these facilities. I'm just disturbed that the recommendations are ones that have already been voted down or tried in the last 12 months and were already unsuccessful. I think it's going to be a complete waste of taxpayers' money to try and do that again when it's already been tried. That's just my personal opinion. I just wonder what makes you think businesses are going to change their minds now when they've got all of COVID-19 costs to deal with as well. I believe you were offering them in the region of £1,500 last year as a financial incentive to open their toilets. Everybody refused to do it because it would not cover their overheads. So whilst I agree that's a great idea to be investigating that, it was already investigated and ultimately it failed. I don't know why that was.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair.
I'll wrap you up there. I would say, okay, so if I listen to you, you're in favour of all these recommendations if we can get them to be successful.
I just need. I don't understand why you're recommending things were recommended in the past but voted down. It seems very bizarre and strange to me that
thank you very much.
These were recommended by myself and a councillor in the past. Nobody listened to us. You know for a fact that you voted to shut down discussions on the toilet, and now the recommendations you're coming out with are ones which were already put forward over a year ago. I'm sorry to labour the point, but the records on your website show that to be the case.
Okay.
It's not an accusation, it's a fact.
Sorry, Chair, on that point, I'm sorry to be rude and butting in here to the people with their hands up, but on this point, can Edward, I don't know if you were able to clarify, did you actually bring something to the table? Because I don't...
Yeah, I think sorry, do you want me to talk now, Andrew?
Yeah.
Or is that right with you, Chair?
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Chair, I think my motion was regarding the Civic. I've got a job to remember because it's a bit of a surprise, but what I was arguing was that we had 50 odd staff. A lot of them did administration roles and are on flexible contracts. There was a zero cost to the council of opening the Civic up. There was a possibility of doing it, and we could have toilet facilities with no cost using our existing provision. And then I believe Lance came back. Sorry, the chief executive town clerk came back with a load of costs, which wasn't my question. I think my question at the time was, we got flexible contracts, people can be doing admin, have the civic centre open, they can use all the toilet facilities. But from my recollection, and it'll have to be called up, I got a load of costs through where I didn't quite understand because I thought we had flexible contracts. But the bit I didn't mention was I was told at the time that we couldn't do my motion back then wasn't a separate, because I knew it'd been ruled out, something about a separate block on it, separate entrance. Mine was using the existing entrance of the Civic and opening it up. But I mean, that is all on public record. But my point was we had 50 odd staff, a lot of them do admin roles. Why can't, like the rest of the country, they be flexible in what times they work, do their admin at the front desk, let the public in, and then after that had those issues where the public were refused access during the day. And that's it, Andrew. I hope that helps.
Yeah. Thank you for the sorry, Chair, for butting in. Thanks for Edward for the clarification. I thought it was important there. Just to say on that point, the working party was looking very closely, although we obviously can't decide on opening hours. We were aware that Sundays were the problem, and we wanted to make sure that there was the possibility of having longer opening hours. Now, there was a long discussion over whether there should be 24-hour access at all, but we were concerned that just opening up and staffing, and we had this conversation with Lance and as a group. So, Edward, I mean, that was a good decision in many respects, but of course there was a funding issue. That funding issue can be taken away by having an access from outside of the property, so that we can determine the hours that we open. So hopefully with the press here this evening, that's clarified from Mr. Jubby as well, that it is not quite as he was stating. But thank you again, Chair and Edward.
Okay, right. I've got a number of other people who wanted to say something. Next on the list was Councillor Whiffen.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the hard work that the working group have put into this. But the reason, or the main reason that I understand the original toilets were taken down was because of the ongoing vandalism, the drug taking, and the cleanliness of them. And there's nothing in this report to cover any of those aspects. Thank you.
Chair, may I come back on a point about that, please, if possible?
No, because I know that will just lead into a debate as to whether that or not that is in fact true, and I think we've been through that enough times. I'm sorry. Anthony, Councillor Piazza.
I think Mr. Jubby has said everything that I was actually going to say. I was going to ask the question about the park storage unit. Was there ever an option to do something with that? Because I understand there are toilets for officers going to be built with the park storage unit. Is that correct?
Can I just come in there? Yes, we certainly looked at that. We looked at almost everything that you can imagine. And we certainly looked at the availability of toilets in the park storage unit. The way that they are positioned would make it impossible for the public to access them. But also, why would you make a secure arrangement for vehicles and working staff and then let the public into it? That would be a nonsense. You've got a secure arrangement for vehicles and tools and everything else that they need to do the park and the cleaning of the town, and then open it up to the public. That really would not be at all sensible. And so we actually, we considered it and we decided that wasn't practical.
Yeah, if I can just add to that point, Diana, that for Antonio's sake here, the SurveyMonkey as well certainly reinforced our view that it wasn't appropriate location. Sorry, wasn't an appropriate location. There were very few people who actually said that corner of the park. The majority were actually looking down either towards the retail outlet that's currently there by the Mugger, or down to the Civic Centre, or a lot of people talking about Castle Place. Which for a number of reasons, because I mean, I've pursued that personally myself over a year ago about the toilets there. And unfortunately, a lot of the remarks also were about building down in Wicker Hill and various other places, which were not part of the remit. But certainly, I think one of the least supported areas were actually over in that corner of the park.
Okay. Right, I've got Councillor Fuller up for a question or make a point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Jubby did make one comment in his many comments about the position of COVID. And of course, we don't know yet what the full implications are of all that's been going on this year so far. So we've got that position to consider. And when it comes to next year, the next financial year, we will of course also be considering the demands being made upon us possibly by Wiltshire Council. In addition to that, we've got an increase in the pay rise. So I am concerned whether or not we can afford to do this work during 2021, or whether it needs to be over a longer period. The one bit that does concern me is that recommendation A, which generally I'm in favour of, together with the other recommendations, it suggests that we should be doing the work in 2021, whatever the cost. The only bit about querying cost is whether or not we have the changing facility. It does seem to me we have to be careful at this particular time of where we're going with money. I think there's a limit as to how much you can pass on to the council taxpayer and our precept.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to be very careful on that recommendation A. I'm hoping really that it means that provided we can organise the budget satisfactorily, we can go ahead, just perhaps initially with the change in the disabled toilet to make it available from the outside. The other thing is, Andrew did mention it, is whether we want this facility to be open 24 hours and the additional risks that will bring with it. As I've mentioned on several times before, Bradford on Avon's toilets are closed early in the day, in the evening generally. I think it's 7 o'clock. And I just wondered if the working party considered the hours and whether or not it should be open, say, till 11 o'clock, because as we saw with that permission for sale of alcohol in 4th Street, it was given away and they could sell alcohol except for 1 minute a day, for 24 hours a day, every day of the week.
Yeah.
And that is going to have implications in people's behaviour. Of course, they can go to Tesco's, more or less, any minute of the day and buy alcohol. I think we've got to be careful that we're providing a facility and we need it to be looked after to keep it running.
Yeah.
Andrew, are you going to reply to that about just looking at the
I was just going to state, Peter, that we did look at working hours, opening hours. We felt that it wasn't the job of the working party to dictate what those hours should be. That would be too restrictive on the recommendation this evening. We did see significant disadvantages with 24 hours. You say 7 o'clock for Bradford. I was under the impression 5:30, but yeah, it's certainly reasonably early. We obviously had concerns around the rough sleepers and the drug users. We did have concerns about the possibility of having, for instance, radar systems whereby you can effectively have 24-hour access. Because what happens is a lot of the alcoholics and drug users are able to have radar keys because they're classified as being within the group that can have radar keys. And what they do is they prop the doors open sometimes and end up rough sleeping in there. So we felt that the sort of minutiae of the recommendation should be dealt with after this evening.
Yeah.
So yes, it has been considered.
I think the recommendation is to go follow these 4 paths, but it's not a license to spend huge sums of money. It's going to the next stage of costing up B and looking at what B might entail in detail and so on. So we're not agreeing to the budgets, so to speak, but we're agreeing to look into these more detail.
Exactly that, yes.
Yeah, if I could just add there was a concern that if we didn't put in 2021, it would be perceived possibly by some people as saying, oh yeah, this is what we want to do, but we're not going to give a date. And if you start talking other dates, then it just seems to be deliberately putting it off.
Okay.
And obviously there are elections next year as well, which can affect things. So I think that's why we said 2021.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. All right, I'll go with one more question. Councillor Kirk's got his hand up.
Peter Fuller has his hand up.
Oh.
Yep, Peter.
Sorry, I was interested in Jeff's point, Chair, in terms of the vandalism and things like that. Can we just have details of the police records and things like that, just demonstrating that occurred? And I was just thinking, Andrew, on the bid, I mean, Wiltshire Council have basically managed to take a £6.2 million asset, if they are, and we now know they may not be, in taking that away from the people of Trowbridge as an asset value. Actually, it's worth 12.5 million if we look at the occupancy of the multi-storey in terms of free car parking. Develop that for housing. They've come up with a brilliant way of offloading a liability, removing free parking, and I just wondered if they can put that in the bid for 11 million, then can't we just get some proper toilets, just put something in a proper toilet facility and get it included in the bid? If they can do it by taking away an asset of Trowbridge, allegedly, then can't we do something with it?
Well, I spoke with Rory one-to-one. This was probably 3 weeks back now, and made it very clear that obviously I mean, any entertainment, any leisure facility is obviously going to have changing and toilet facilities. And what I've said is very clearly that I want access onto the park as well. So I've been waiting for Lance to come back, and I've mentioned it to a few councillors, that because the bid process is sort of imminent, we need to be in there from day one saying this is what we want to see facing the park, because we do have some sort of purchase within this because we own the park. So definitely we need to be seeing park facing toilets. And I would hope that they would be accessible much later than we could possibly make town ones in the civic centre. Under point B, recommendation B, I mean, obviously that's up to us when courts are open, and obviously when facilities would be open, we would be looking at having lockers, toilets and everything else open. So yeah, we need to be in early with the bid, but also we can't rely on a bid that, who knows, they may not get the funding. If they do get the funding, we have no actual control over what goes on at Wiltshire Council. And I think that's very evident by the fact that I haven't seen what the bid is, nor have you. And I'm assuming nobody else here this evening has. It's just a few cabinet members of county and Rory and his boss.
Yeah.
So
I think as long as we can make the point that Wiltshire Council will be saving the maintenance cost on the actual multi-story that is changed, and saving a huge amount of money. So, you know, we should have some facilities in Trowbridge if it does happen.
Well, that's why we put it.
And it shouldn't just be a small amount, like, you know, they're looking at millions.
No, but
we're worried about less than 100,000.
But Andrew, that is why we put in B, which is a really good big facility.
Yeah.
It isn't just a little cabin. It's something decent for the use of people who not only walk in the park, but actually exercise and do activities in the park. But Andrew, did you want to talk about the other funding that we did explore for B?
Are you talking about the Tennis Association?
And yeah, and the Bowls Association, etc.
Yeah, again, we couldn't go too far down this road because we did ask Hayley to look tentatively at funding options. But the problem is we don't want to tie up too much officer time in pursuing grants. But yeah, I mean, there are other options if for some reason Wiltshire Council either doesn't go ahead or goes ahead and they say, well, actually, you're not touching any of this money, which could certainly be the case. Yeah, so Lawn Tennis Association, bowls organisations, and other grant funding opportunities would be pursued as well.
All right.
Excuse me, Chair. Excuse me, Chair. My name was mentioned in a couple of comments after my original comment. Could I have a right of reply, please, to what was said about my previous comments?
Very quickly.
Edward Kirk made a very important point. He asked, can we see records to back up these claims about vandalism, graffiti, etc.? Everyone in the public and the council and the media need to know.
No, this recommendation is about moving forward.
Please let me use my right of reply, please. This is very important. Under FOI request, it was disclosed that you have no records recorded anywhere of any vandalism, graffiti or criminal act ever having taken place in those toilets. I was told by your officer to ask the police instead. I asked the police too. The police also came back that they have no records of any criminal offences ever taking part anywhere near those toilets. There was one incident relating to sexual behaviour only in the last 5 years. So when people claim that they were closed for those reasons, it is an unfounded claim. It is not true. It's based on hearsay. That's my opinion. That's my belief, backed up by your FOI requests that you released to the world. The world needs to know.
No record doesn't mean to say it didn't happen.
Can we mute this?
No record doesn't mean to say it didn't
happen.
Thank
you.
Just that we didn't keep records doesn't mean to say it didn't happen.
Yeah. Anyway, I really think if you look at the recommendation is looking forwards, and I don't see the point in digging this up personally myself. Okay, so the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Can I have a recorded vote on councillors here as to whether they're voting in favour of it or not, Lance?
Yes, you can. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that, was I? Councillor Bates.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce.
For.
Councillor Bryant.
For.
Councillor Cavill.
For.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Halleck.
Before I answer, can I ask that a diagram be presented at full council of the actual changes that will be done at the Civic Centre?
Yes.
And I am for the actual recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Parman.
For.
Councillor Whiffin.
Against.
Thank you. 8-1.
Okay, good. Right, let's move on to the next item. Right, I'll let Councillor Whiffin talk about this one.
Thank you, Chair. Shout at me if I go on too long. The Wiltshire Armed Forces and Veterans event commenced in Trowbridge Park as a one-day event in 2004. It progressed to two days in 2005, where it has remained. This event, which has been supported by Trowbridge Town Council every year, is, in my opinion, the primary show in the town. Given that members of the extremely hard-working committee have decided unanimously to resign, it is now up to the council whether to try and maintain and enhance it. It cost in excess of £20,000 and a huge amount of work over the previous 52 weeks. In fact, the following year's event is already being organised before the current year's events. I have spoken to the chair and vice chair, and both would be supportive, but only in as much as providing contacts, insurance, and would forward messages, mails, letters as required due to participants because of the freedom of information restrictions. The biggest problem is lack of volunteers, and the council do not have sufficient staff to organise and run the show. With thousands of ex-service personnel in Wiltshire, would it be worth exploring avenues to drum up support? The Royal British Legion, RAFA, White Ensign, etc. are all lacking support. Wiltshire Council has a military civilian integration officer and a vacancy for an army outreach officer. Whether these could be incorporated in any efforts to keep it going, or is it time to let go? I shall attend the final meeting on Thursday when disposal of assets will be discussed. The town council, if they were so interested, could put in a bid for some of these assets. But, you know, a decision will need to be made. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I think what I'll do here is just open up the floor to any councillors for sort of comments and reactions, or if they have constructive ideas of how this could be helped moving forwards. Councillor Piazza.
I just wanted to say I was really upset to hear this news from Mary Rose originally. And I'm happy to put myself forward for some voluntary role that is part-time to assist. But I think it would be really good as well for councillors with a strong social media presence, and also maybe Trowbridge Town Council as well, to advertise and to use their resources to find volunteers, because I'm sure there are plenty in sort of Trowbridge and beyond who would happily devote their time to this. I think it is possible to save it. And in the day of social media where we don't have to go out and find people, we can easily put something on Spotted Trowbridge or advertise and find people, I'm sure. That's just my comment there.
All right, I think that Nub News and various outlets have already put that out and explained that there is a shortage of volunteers. So a certain amount of that's going on already. Right, Councillor King.
Only to ask Jeff, if this does fold and there are assets, would he be able to provide the council with a list of them so that they could make a decision if they wanted to keep any or buy any?
Yes, I don't see why not. I know they last year they purchased a quantity of brand new fold tables. There are also track mats for laying in the park to prevent vehicles causing damage. I think most of this could be probably purchased for about 25% of the actual cost.
Thank you.
And Councillor Kirk.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just, I understand a member of the public has been kicked out of the meeting. I'd just like to know on what grounds and who sanctioned it and why.
I think during the last, towards the end of the last item, the chairman asked me to mute a member of the public.
Yes.
And the only way I could do that was by removing him from the meeting. He then immediately rejoined the meeting and I allowed him back in.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Does anybody else have constructive ideas? I mean, I'm thinking aloud. So have the Lions and the British Legion said they wouldn't step in and run the event themselves?
They don't have the manpower, and the majority of their membership is, dare I say it, retired personnel.
Yeah, I think we're getting so far removed from the previous World War that they're just there's not the people there. Does anybody else have some input or ideas they could bring forward? Councillor Fuller.
It's an awful shame, actually, if this premier event, which you have every year, folds, as it sounds as if it's going to. You know, the number of people that it brings into our park and into the town is enormous. There's no other event that we have which gets anywhere near it, perhaps except the Christmas light switch on, which seems to be fading away as well. It would be awful if we could just make at least one effort as a town council to see if we can get any assistance from within the town to help to pick up the pieces and get on and run it again in the future. For obvious reasons, it's not going this year, but you all remember the battles which took place was it last year or the year before, when we were hoping that Wiltshire Council would perhaps put in a bit more money than the amounts which they used to put in before they grabbed hold of the Salisbury event, which of course was a national event. But as I say, it's an awful sad day if we have to say goodbye to this event. And I just wonder, is there any scope for the Chamber of Commerce to grab hold of it by the neck?
I mean, we can ask the Chamber of Commerce, but I don't see that as being realistic. But I will ask them. Councillor Hoare.
Yeah, it was just a question to Jeff, really. This is probably something you've already done, but I presume there's militaria enthusiast groups around the country. I know that there's in Laycock they have quite a significant event, and I just wondered if those groups had been contacted, if they're even contactable, if such a thing exists, or whether it's just a kind of free for all.
Well, I think the Laycock ones are organised by the Whitehall Garden Centre. A lot of
Oh,
them.
really? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. You know, they've got full-time staff which can accommodate that. I mean, I can give you some examples of the costings if anybody's interested in that. Up until February of this year, we'd already committed 11,000, just £11 short of £12,000. Waste management is 3,000. The barriers, 2,740. Security, 3,655. Signage, 719. The static Spitfire was £1,500. The Magician was £350, and it goes on and on and on. The majority of eventers would not attend if it was cut down to a one-day show. So you've got to retain the 2 days, which means hiring the park for 4 days.
Who else? I've got Peter Fuller back. Is your hand up again fresh, or is it still there from last time? Oh, it's gone down. Councillor King? Councillor King, you've got your hand up. Nope.
Can I just say something, Chairman? The officers did discuss this, obviously, you know, if the council wishes to support the group with seeking to continue the event next year, that's fine. But the officers' view is that if that wasn't a success, that there might be an opportunity for the council to organise an alternative event to sort of fill the calendar, as it were. The reason why we probably would suggest that it might not be appropriate for the town council to organise an event on Armed Forces weekend itself is because there are actually quite a number of competing events, and they seem to have grown over more recent years, particularly following the award of the national event to Salisbury a couple of years ago. We think that to some extent it might be an opportunity for Trowbridge to look at organising another event with a different sort of theme, but perhaps picking up some of the elements from the Armed Forces weekend, but possibly on a different, slightly different time than that weekend, which would be competing with other events nearby.
Okay, no, that sounds interesting. Councillor Cavill, you've got.
Yes, I would very much like to see the officers' proposal along those lines. I think that's an excellent idea because things change, we move forward. There are all sorts of political, social, philosophical reasons why we have to change, and it might be an opportunity rather than disaster. But at the same time, I would be really sorry to see it go. And it does occur to me that in the parades of people who take part in the parade that take the salute, there are a huge number of organisations, each of which is run by people who are a good deal younger than me, not younger than Antonio, but younger than me and younger than Peter and younger than Jeff. So maybe that is a possible place in which we might start to say, if you wish to continue this, perhaps some of the organisers of your organisations might help.
Okay, so I think we have to leave that with racking our brains in terms of thoughts of who potentially could step in to help and look at potential alternative events moving forwards that we could put on ourselves. Jeff, do you want to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, you know, I go with what David and Lance have both said. Unfortunately, I don't think we have the facilities or the manpower to run an event like this in Trowbridge. I think with David's suggestion, if we could get it on the social media somewhere, and see if there are organisations. But one point David did miss on was that these organisations that attend the parade are already involved in their own associations, and they wouldn't have the time available to go with ours. Just one thing, Lance, is it worthwhile me sussing out what items they are disposing of, and would the town council be interested in purchasing any of them?
I'm sure we'd be interested in looking at the list, yes.
Okay.
All right. Right. Moving on then to item number 10, the grants policy. And I'm hoping everybody has read through this in advance of the meeting.
Move the recommendation.
I'll second that. Does anybody want to debate this, or is everybody happy with what's in the grants policy?
Yes.
So shall I go straight to a vote, or are there any questions? Right.
Could I just mention the grant in there for the Armed Forces weekend? Perhaps we should retain it there, but just see who we might give it to, if in case the staff come up with desires to perhaps have a musical event with a military flavour.
Okay. Councillor, oh no, his hand's gone down. Right. Okay, so I've the recommendation's been moved and seconded. I think all those in favour, or is there anybody against? No. Okay, that's moved. Or agreed. Management accounts. Again, I'm hoping people have looked through this beforehand.
I think I summarised this in the report, but you can see that in the yellow section, the museum is just under £5,000 overspent at the end of Q1. The project is balanced by extractions from the reserve of the loan and the grant income from the lottery. Too far. The blue section is information services and leisure services. You'll see the dark blue leisure services is a little bit over budget, although the mayor has helped significantly by spending very little so far this year.
He's our cheapest mayor.
Leisure services itself is underspent, partly as a result of us availing ourselves of the furlough scheme. You can see an underspend on leisure itself there, and non-expenditure on events, including the Armed Forces and the Carnival, and higher than expected income on tennis. But obviously the furlough scheme hasn't come to an end yet, and it will have a bigger impact probably later in the year when the furlough scheme runs out. But hopefully our school activities will be back on track by the end of the year. The green section, the democratic grants and resources, is underspent there because we've not been spending on certain things that we would normally spend on, making some savings. Community infrastructure levy is not shown in Q1 because there have been some anomalies with the payments from Wiltshire Council, but that hopefully has now been resolved, and they've paid us what they should have paid us. So that will appear in Q2. The neighbourhood services are underspent again. That's mainly due to grounds maintenance and other savings made on services that have not been provided in full during the emergency. and venues you can see are overspent because of the lack of income not being fully made up by the furlough scheme.
Chair, may I ask something of Lance, please?
Yes.
Well, I was just wondering with the neighbourhood services, because there seems to be part of the town which are so dirty and need so much cleaning up. I wonder why, you know, why this hasn't been done during this period. I mean, I appreciate initially they were having to do other things, but there does seem to be a terrific build-up of dirt and rubbish and weeds and so on. Is it back on track?
Yeah. I think you just need to report the areas you think are in trouble, and they will address those, but they are operational.
We will be back on track when we've got a new ground staff. But as I said earlier, we are considering what the best option for replacing the member of staff that we've lost recently is. The staff are now no longer providing other services that they weren't providing before. So we are getting back on track as much as possible now.
Yeah, I did see a van today parked near me, which was an active Trowbridge van. Has that started up again now? I mean, it was somebody who drove it and parked it, so they were obviously driving it somewhere.
I think they've probably started services in schools from today, yes.
All right, okay, thank you.
Councillor Kirk, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the active Trowbridge point, I know we've got areas where we have commercial activity and we're looking at cutting these back, hopefully. But I'm concerned that we're in effect furloughing staff for an operation that actually services our nearest parishes, let's say, with services, and we're burdened with the cost of that. Can we just terminate all these contracts and just concentrate on Trowbridge as opposed to trying to subsidise the local parishes and trying to do commercial activity further afield that doesn't work? It just seems a very strange thing to me that we're in effect perpetually losing money on behalf of the Trowbridge Council taxpayer to service the villages, and some of these villages don't actually use our services even though they're subsidised.
I think that's got to be taken on a case-by-case basis through the relevant committee. We are looking at costs and to what level things are subsidised, and we are trying to minimise that. So I think that's an ongoing action.
That's a leisure committee decision.
I just know the termination time of these contracts. I just think people need to be aware that in effect the Trowbridge Council taxpayer is subsidising services in villages. I mean, I don't know if Lance wants to come back and just confirm if that's the case or not.
As I've explained to you on numerous occasions before, Councillor Kirk, the village schools provide services to the residents of Trowbridge. The majority of pupils at West Ashton School are residents of the town of Trowbridge. You cannot automatically assume that because we are subsidising activities in schools that are in villages, that we are not subsidising the council taxpayers who are paying the money to Trowbridge Town Council.
They have their own parish council and they should contribute to those services.
No, the residents of Trowbridge do not have their own parish council. They have Trowbridge Town Council.
If they choose to educate their children outside of the town, then the parish that school is in should foot the bill.
As I've explained before, it is not them that choose to educate their children in schools outside the town boundary. It is often Wiltshire Council who allocate them to those schools, and they have no choice as to whether they send their child to a school in the town or a school outside the town boundary.
I'm just going to get Peter here. Peter's got a school in his area. Peter, is your school full, please?
Well, it wasn't before the shutdown.
Well, Councillor Kirk, as a member of Wiltshire Council, and one of the only members of Wiltshire Council in Trowbridge who is a member of the party that is in control at Wiltshire Council, perhaps you should address those questions to Wiltshire Council and not Trowbridge Town Council.
Okay, right. I think
can we move on?
Let's move on. So I move that we note these expenses, these.
Seconded.
All those in favour, or rather anybody against the? Okay, right. Let's move on. Time is and tide waits for no man. Risk and audit panel. Has everybody checked through and looked at that? I move that we accept those minutes.
Seconded.
All those in favour? If there's no questions, great. Free parking days. Oh, there's a concept if ever I've heard one. So we get given a certain number of free parking days from Wiltshire Council for the Wiltshire Council car parks, and we'd aligned those with things like Weavers Markets and different events. This is the latest recommendation on where we could use those free parking days.
Move the recommendation.
I'll second that. Does anybody have any changes they'd like to see or anything? Right, okay, so that's moved and seconded. All those in favour of those parking days being as per the sheet? Yeah. No objections, no hands up. Payment of accounts to consider for approval, payments, receipts, etc. So
move we approve.
Seconded. All those in favour? No questions or objections. Right. Policies, the last one that will take a bit of time, I expect. To review and approve the data breach policies. So we'll take that one first.
Move we approve.
I've seconded that. Has anybody got questions or points on the data breach policy? Okay, then I'll take it straight to the vote. All those in favour? Yep, nobody's against that. Right. Okay. B to review and approve dealing with unreasonable behaviour policy. Okay. Now this has been out. We've had feedback.
Move we approve in general, subject to any alterations.
I think here we can go through this, and we've had a very detailed feedback from one councillor and a few other opinions. My opinion is that after reading through it several times, it seems fairly standard and fairly similar to other parishes and town councils in the country have done. So I would second what Bob is saying and approve them. But I think if councillors have specific areas they may want to adjust at all, there is time for an amendment to go in between now and full council. And I think Councillor Hoare has an input here.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a really important document, and you really need to protect members of the staff from harassment. You also need to protect the council taxpayers as well, because obviously if the bandwidth is being used up by one or two people, then other residents aren't necessarily going to be able to get the service that they deserve. But the main thing that I would really like to see is that it's stressed from the outset that should somebody be subjected to any of these things, that they do have a right to appeal, that the process is clearly laid out, and ideally, Lance, I'm not sure if you know the answer to this. Ideally, the appeal process should be to a third party. Is there anything that would act in that manner?
We're not subject to the Ombudsman, so that's not an option. The only option is for people to make a complaint to the Information Commissioner's Office, which is an opportunity that's available to them.
Yeah.
The Information Commissioner's Office would be the final body that would rule on the implementation of this policy and whether it was considered reasonable to have done so or not.
Yeah, so I think as long as it's clear and the process of doing that is made clear from the outset, so that this doesn't seem like the judge, jury, and executioner. There is redress if somebody wants it, and I'm happy with it, because I think it's very important to protect staff and other residents.
I think there is an appeals process outlined in here that goes to a panel of councillors, and councillors are addressed by the residents. So in a representative democracy, they are representing their residents. So that should act fairly. And then, but we do need to add, I think, that if they're not happy with that redress, then they go to the.
My worry is that even though we're all democratically elected councillors, certain individuals will, without a doubt, politicise it, because they've already shown that they are determined to try to undermine the integrity of the council. So that's why I think a third party ombudsman is essential.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we could probably come up with a proposal where you put something at the beginning of the just kind of highlighting that right from the onset. So that's something
absolutely
we could
clear. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
It needs to be very, very clear.
A few more people wanting to make points. We've got Mr. Jubby online, and he did say he wanted to talk on this, but I will ask him to try and be as brief as possible, bearing in mind the fact it's 9:15 here. But
thank you, Chair. I will try and be as brief as possible, but I've got 4 points with questions that I do need to raise. Firstly, this policy is not available to the public. It should be, so we can see what's included in it now. Otherwise, how can we comment on it tonight?
I think you've seen it.
Luckily, I was provided a copy of it, so I can comment on it. Question number 1. In July, you approved a data policy and you improved a retention schedule. None of those policies that you approved in July say you're going to retain phone recordings or Facebook data. Why does this policy not match the privacy policy and data policy you just voted for in July? Doesn't that make this illegal? Can you answer that question, please?
I'm not sure specifically what Mr. Jubby is referring to in this policy being contrary to existing policy.
In July, well, in your privacy notice, it does not mention that you got a legal permission to record people's Facebook data. For example, you would need to have been granted investigatory powers under the Investigatory Powers Act 2016 in order to gather and retain bulk personal data sets on people. Only the police or the courts can give you that power. This policy that you want to approve will ultimately give you the power to create a data set on somebody from Facebook or from phone recordings without you being granted that investigatory power. Or some people might call that a snooper's charter. You are not allowed to have a snooper's charter.
I still don't understand what it is within this proposed policy that you claim is giving us that power.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Because it says that you're going to record people's Facebook data and you're going to use it against a person if you think they're being unreasonable. You have to suspect somebody of a criminal offence to be able to gather such information. Just because somebody has been offended by a comment somebody has made, that does not give you the power to gather people's Facebook data or to record people's phone calls. You know, comedians make offensive jokes all the time.
Can I just say the word I've just done a search. The word Facebook doesn't appear in this policy.
Yeah, so which page?
Social media. Social media. You're going to keep a record of comments people have made on social media. That's what it says. That means all social media, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, whatever. You specifically mention social media. You're going to be snooping on any comments people have made. I've even had an email from a member of your staff saying she's concerned about comments made by people on social media. So you're already snooping and recording what people are saying without having investigatory powers to do that. Have you provided a copy of this policy to your legal team or to your Audit West data protection officer to see are any of those things legal?
This policy has been developed as a result of advice from our data protection officer.
But have they reviewed the policy prior to?
They've pointed us in the direction of this policy as a suitable policy to be adopted by the council.
Okay, I'm just concerned that you could be opening yourself up to legal challenges as a council if you're not complying with certain things.
I think you're mistaken in the expectations of the references to social media and this bit of the policy that I've got in front of me. This is referring to us keeping records of evidence of social media that has already been referenced to the council. It's not about us going searching for the evidence that has not already been referenced to the council.
Are you allowed to process people's data from their private, personal Facebook accounts?
If it's referring to, if it's data that refers to the council and makes allegations about the council, yes.
Yeah, but if they're founded in truth, there's no unreasonable behaviour. That's my point that I'm making. I mean, councillors make rude comments to people all the time.
There are many examples already of things that are unfounded in truth.
I also want to know, you're supposed to carry out a data protection impact assessment anytime you're thinking about gathering such data on people. You need to evidence, have you looked at the impact assessment of gathering such data? Have you already carried out data protection impact assessments for doing such surveillance on social media?
There's no suggestion in the policy that we're undertaking any gathering in the sense of searching for evidence that's not already available and referenced to the council.
There's the last paragraph.
There's certainly no suggestion that there's any surveillance taking place.
Does the last paragraph not say that you direct staff to templates on your website and you instruct them to fill out these templates for any phone calls that are made, any phone records?
Yes, we are keeping a record of communication. Just as you have pointed out to us earlier in the meeting, Mr. Jubby, that the council has in the past failed to keep a record of evidence. What this policy is doing is what you exactly what you requested, which is in future to keep a record of such evidence so that we can provide it in the future.
You're confusing laws. That was under Freedom of Information Act. This is under Data Protection.
Yeah, so in future, if somebody makes a request under the Freedom of Information Act to provide evidence, we will in future have the evidence because we have got a policy that says we will gather the evidence.
Yeah. So if someone makes a subject access request, you'll be able to provide copies of all phone records that you've kept on that person, or will you be keeping that secret to yourselves?
Well, no, of course we would, because we'd be abiding by the law as we always do.
Yeah. I'm not going to make a comment on that at the moment, other than to say you are aware the Information Commission officer ruled that you had breached someone's data protection, that you had unlawfully recorded them, put them on loudspeaker and monitored their calls. The Information Commission officer was very clear that you were not allowed to do that. Yet here is this policy where you're explicitly saying you are going to now do that, counter to what you have been told is against the law by the external third-party regulator, which Councillor Hoare made very clear he wants that oversight, and you are potentially completely going against that oversight, which has been provided to you already.
I'm confused.
Yeah, I've lost there.
Sorry.
Can we move on?
Right. Okay, have you finished with your input, Mr. Jubby? Okay, anybody else? So I've got Peter, Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must say I'm a little bit concerned about this whole raft of policies, and just want the clerk to confirm really that this is in line with what other local authorities have got in being. And I do note that the Ombudsman does suggest to authorities that they have such a policy. And secondly, the motion before us is shown as being for our approval and not being a recommendation to full council for their approval. So our chairman's comments about it going to full council would only really be going to full council if it's a recommendation to them. Although, of course, anyone could raise a question when it comes to the minutes of this particular committee when they're confirmed in full council.
I stand corrected. I hadn't understood that correctly.
Policy would normally be adopted fully by Policy and Resources Committee rather than as a recommendation to full council.
Yeah.
But if the committee wanted, it could make it as a recommendation to full council.
And the other point, Lance, about being used by other local authorities, have we altered it very much?
This particular policy is one we've adopted, which we were pointed in the direction of, which is from Waltham Forest Borough Council, one of the London boroughs, has been an exemplar policy of its type. And as you will see, the definition that's used in the policy of unreasonable complaint behaviour and unreasonable persistent complaints is the one provided by the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, even though the LGSCO doesn't apply to parish and town councils. It is appropriate that we use it because it's what's used by district and borough councils and unitary councils.
Okay, I've got Councillor Bryant. Councillor Bryant.
Sorry, I was muting and unmuting, and it was lagging, yeah. So I muted myself again. Just 2 points that I'd like to make. I think in terms of the document, it's pretty thorough. I'm pleased that the IOC has been consulted here. I've taken some advice myself from a GDPR expert, very knowledgeable GDPR expert this morning. The only thing that I would question, and again, I should have read back through it. Can I just check with Lance first? Is there a time limit that we've put in there on how long we're holding this information?
Not in this policy, it's not, no, but those time limits are covered by our data retention policy.
That's the comment that was made by this person who gave me the advice. It might be in the other policy.
Yeah.
Would that be 2 years?
I'm not sure. I would have to check what our data retention policy says. It will vary depending upon what data that is.
Okay, that reassures me on that point. The other is a more general point. Just to remind councillors or a councillor that we do have a code of conduct, and that I don't particularly view it as very ethical to go to the press on a matter such as this when they've had the opportunity to feed into the document and actually play a part in actually shaping that document. So to go to the press and actually threaten to report the council, I find totally unethical on the part of an elected councillor. We are a council body. We should be working together. We should not be colluding against anything, but we should be working for the best of this town. And I'll leave that there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Next, I'd like to make the point that there are several councils that have a similar policy, not identical word for word, but there's Gloucestershire, there's Somerset and Warwickshire who use very, very similar ones. When I did a quick search, that we're not setting a precedent here by a long way. Right, I've got Councillor Piazza.
Thank you, Chair. Where do I start? I've spoken to the MP about this document. I've spoken to the deputy leader about this document, and the word that they used is excessive to describe it. It's far too draconian. It's far too much, basically. I completely, it's a mixed bag as well, because I can completely understand banning abusive behaviour, or if a resident is racist to an officer, that's completely acceptable and that's the right thing to do. to ban that resident. However, certain aspects of it just are entirely subjective. To be offensive is to be subjective. In order to be able to think, you have to risk to be offensive. You exercise your freedom of speech to risk offending people. Again, being rude, that can be entirely subjective. If I was to say, I don't know, if I was to talk about Stuart's hat, I might make a joke about it, but he might find that offensive. Something like that. It's just a really bizarre thing to include in the document, and I just think it's entirely, it can be taken out. And if we approve this, I think it just makes the document too subjective, and it's something that officers could potentially take to not talk to residents. And it also creates this unhealthy atmosphere. The MP made this point. It could potentially create this unhealthy atmosphere which pits residents against officers, and we just don't want that, basically. And I feel like that's moving towards that as well. I don't think there's no legitimate reason for the council also to hold a spreadsheet with residents' names and personal information, which is reminiscent of blacklisting when a resident has not committed a crime. I know Mr. Chubby said that already. Can I finish? So,
Yes,
another thing this evening, people keep interrupting everyone. Just let people finish, please. Or
but if you're just going to repeat everything that you've put in your detailed analysis.
Well, I'm not repeating it, and you're interrupting me again. So can I continue, please? Again, there's no reason for officers to.
He is the chairman. He is entitled to control the meeting.
You're not the chairman, though. So why are you interrupting me? Is there going to be a behaviour policy for councillors?
You don't answer my questions when I email you. You don't answer my questions.
Yeah. All right, guys. No, let Councillor Piazza finish, but I wish if he can keep it to new information or.
Thank you, Mr. Palman. Councillor Palman. I'll try and keep it short. I've had councillors say to me that I was unfit for public office. I've had a councillor call me dense. I've had one call me a liar tonight. Why are we taking the moral high ground here as councillors? I think it shouldn't be like that. Ideally, we're unpaid volunteers. We should be serving our residents, and we're creating some sort of atmosphere where we're in our ivory towers and acting as judges. Again, I don't think councillors should be provided with confidential information about residents as well and be judging them, being able to ban them. Again, that's just not really something that a parish council needs to do, I don't think. I just think this whole document needs to be one thing that should happen, which I think Councillor Fuller said this or hinted at it. I think it needs to be put to full council if all councillors are going to be involved in it. And number two, I just think it needs to be voted down, and we can write it up again from scratch, basically. Essentially, there's so many things in it that contradict itself. I just don't think it's well written at all, and it's extremely draconian, but I'll leave it there.
Thank you for that input. On one point, you're talking about keeping spreadsheets of data about people. It's something that's standard in all councils. Wiltshire Council have lists of people in such a similar way, and there's not we're not doing anything any different than other councils do. Right, Councillor Hawes.
Not for being sorry, just to say, not for being offensive though. I wouldn't say. I mean, not for being offensive. Wiltshire Council probably, I don't think they do. I can check their policy, but I'm pretty sure I didn't see that on there, not for being offensive.
All right.
Thank you, Chair. I have to admit, I'm glad I wasn't having a drink. I would have spat out across my computer when Councillor Piazza said about pitting the public against council officers. I mean, that's literally your raison d'etre. That's literally what you do all the time, Councillor Piazza. Anyway, the point of this document is to protect staff from harassment, and it's also to protect our residents, to ensure that they have that the bandwidth isn't all taken up by one or two individuals, and that they also have a service that's provided to them. Now, if they also have redress to another authority to adjudicate on whether action taken because of this document against that individual is wrong or right, then surely there's no problem. This is a purely standard document. The one concern that I had was that I did not want the council to be portrayed, which I know you will, Councillor Piazza. I did not want the council to be portrayed as judge, jury and executioner, even though we're all elected. We're all elected. So
Right.
That's why it's essential to be able to refer to another body, which will be at the very start of the document.
Right. It would be nice to hear from some of the other councillors who are very quiet at the moment. I've got Councillor Kirk's hand up. Councillor Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, it just comes to me. Firstly, I would have been happier if this was in a public domain prior to the meeting. I think that doesn't look great on us, to be honest, to start with. The other question is why Trowbridge needs it, and I couldn't find another council in Wiltshire that has it. And I think, going back on Chris's point, that it could look like we're implementing something and going up against the public or whatever, politicised. I think the only way this sort of policy can be brought in is if there's agreement amongst all the parishes. So quite simply, just phone up Simon Fisher in Devizes, see if he agrees with it, Chippenham, Malmesbury, just get them all on board with it. If we have a restrictive policy in place otherwise, it does just look like we've got some sort of protectionism coming in. And then I think we have to bring it in context with our history to date. So, you know, we have breached data protection. There's no two ways about it. We didn't follow planning procedure when we demolished the toilets. We have got the most, you know, borrowing of any parish council
Wait a minute,
in the country.
I
just think it would be useful if, you know, so that we can't be accused of doing that. Quite happy if other councils in Wiltshire adopt this policy, but until another council in Wiltshire does it, us imposing, I didn't want to use the word draconian, but us imposing a restrictive policy, I get all the protection stuff, love it, and the other councils will love it. But if they're not doing it, I think to be the only council in Wiltshire doing it doesn't put us in great standing. And yeah, I'm not really happy with that. But no. Okay, thank you.
I take that point, but there's a lot of things that we've been trailblazers within Wiltshire in terms of adapting and taking on more responsible for Wiltshire Council and becoming a larger town council. So I really do think that, you know, saying let's wait until everybody else has done something before we're interested, and it doesn't really work. But I think
no, Stuart, I didn't say Stuart. I said it's quite easy just to look. We didn't publicise this document for a start. That should have been done. That concerns me. I'm not actually as bothered about the content of it as long as the other councils adopt it. It won't take Lance long just to postpone it. I would go for postponing this until we get the views of the other council, because having something alone is different.
Can I provide an answer to your point as to why other councils haven't adopted it? Because their DPO hasn't advised them to adopt it because they're not having to deal with such issues at the moment from members of the public, which requires them to adopt such a policy.
I'm still a little confused. I mean, to me, the people in the information centre and so on, having to put up with somebody being offensive is something that they should not need to do, and being protected from that, I can see as being a positive. I really don't quite understand the negative. You know, what is it on this policy that people, you know, seriously think it could happen as a really negative thing? I just see it as a general upside for everybody involved.
Sorry, can I come back,
yeah.
Chair? Is that all right? Yeah, no, I take your point fully in terms of if it is a great policy, but that's not to say that the same situation isn't going to happen with other councils. I'm just saying, in the public domain, a document that hasn't been disclosed to the public, we are agreeing in private, although now it is open to members of this meeting. We're putting something in place that other councils in Wiltshire don't have. And I think it should be brought forward so that more councils are doing the same, or we don't do it. I think the risk is that going out alone and restricting the public, it's just a risky game. I'm not in favour of it.
If you're in favour of the document, then why don't you explain that to your residents? The only reason residents
Sorry,
are
Chris,
going
I
to
missed that last bit you said.
Why don't you explain that? If you're in favour of the document, why don't you explain that to your residents? The only reason residents are going to think that there's any issue with this, the fact that we're protecting staff and residents through this document, is if councillors portray it as some kind of draconian. So if you're in favour of it, sell it to the residents.
No. Sorry, misunderstanding. I said if it's adopted by all councils. I mean, it's not. You know,
you said you've not got a problem with the document.
Okay.
No, I have got some odd issues with the document, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
If we've got a policy, we're putting. My point really is, Chris, is with our situation, the fact we have had some data breaches, we have actually not followed procedure on a number of things. I mean, like that park storage unit not advertising the loan to the public. There are a number of issues where we haven't been fully compliant. And I think for us to introduce a policy like that, our current status, is a dangerous thing to do. I think it just looks like we're being restrictive. Look, if all the councils in Wiltshire want to do it, then we can go along with it. But us putting something in place, restricting members of the public in our situation, it must be feasible. I cannot believe that we're the only council in Wiltshire that has to have this document.
Okay, can I respond to that? Because
of course you can. Sorry,
someone's been doing some research in the background as we speak. Malmesbury have a very similar policy, so you can check out there as well. So it's not true that nowhere in Wiltshire has got this policy. Okay,
I'm happy with Malmesbury's one. I think just do that one.
Okay. Anyway, I think I want to move
to the vote.
No, did any more hands up? No. So I think we will take this to.
You've got Jeff and two others.
Jeff and two others. Sorry.
Oh no, they've gone.
They've gone.
Okay.
Now.
No, I've got Jeff back again.
Jeff, if you want to say something.
All I was going to say is I personally have no problems with the procedures.
Okay.
Could I suggest that we put 2 copies into the Tourist Information Centre and put it to the full council?
Okay. So I think we've got it. There's something highlighted in yellow just saying that Lance is going to add in suitable wording about the appeals process at the front section. But given that he's done that and this doesn't have to go to full council, I'm going to put it to the original.
I will move it with that addition.
Okay, and I'll second that. And I think that Antonio's probably going to ask for a recorded vote. I think we might as well have that anyway, just to satisfy him.
Yes, please. You know me so well.
I know. Save us. So let's go through that process.
Councillor Bates.
4.
Councillor Bryce.
4.
Councillor Bryant.
4.
Councillor Cavill.
4.
Councillor Fuller.
Abstain. Thought you'd have something
Councillor
different.
Halleck. Councillor Halleck.
Abstain.
Councillor Hoare.
We didn't hear you.
Councillor Parman.
4.
And Councillor Whiffin. Thank you. That's 7 to 2 abstentions. None against.
Okay. Right, back to the agenda. Thank you.
That's carried.
Yep, that's carried. Sorry, I will keep saying that. And that's both of them. Media press releases. Has anybody got any additional ideas other beyond free parking days? No. Okay.
A call for volunteers on the armed forces.
Yeah. Okay. And Councillor Kirk, you've got an idea?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wondered, as this document wasn't disclosed to the public earlier, perhaps we could publicise it on the website.
Yeah, it'll be there within all our policies, and we can.
No, but just put it as a notification if it wasn't given earlier. Thank you, Chair.
Cheers, Sam. Councillor King?
Chair, may I just ask, I had got my hand up.
Yeah.
Somebody said something about a meeting having been changed from the 8th to the 9th of September. What is that?
That was full council at Wiltshire Council.
Oh, at Wiltshire, not
Yeah.
not Town Council.
No, so it's where the community governance review's going through.
Okay, thank you.
The next meeting here, we've got a town development meeting a week today. Okay, can I thank everybody for their time and the lively debate?
Mr. Chairman, could I just mention the last
Yes.
item on the agenda?
All right, yes.
Is there any possibility at that meeting we could have a review of the standing orders? You know, it accepted, I think, that we do need to alter one or two of those, and I think earlier rather than better, so that we can, if necessary, talk at length about them.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that would be useful. It would, you know, and generally help people understand the standing orders a bit more, including myself. Okay.
Does that include only speaking once?
Yeah, I hope so.
Mr. Chairman, can I please give the mayor a personal message?
Yes, you can.
Ernie Quince is dead.
Oh dear, that's
Oh,
very
dear.
sad. I might be late on Friday, Jeff, so I'll take myself up there.
Okay, mate.
All
Is
right.
that today?
Well, I received the message while this meeting was on.
Ah, okay. Cheers.
All right, councillors, he's an ex-comrade of ours.
Oh dear. Sorry to hear that.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Okay. See some of you next week.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Bye.
Antonio and Edward for a lively debate.